and welcome back to our kitchen. Our next guest is the Creative and Development Director at Milestone, Michele Caletti. Michele, nice to meet you, nice to see you.
Hello, thanks for inviting me.
Welcome to our kitchen. Michele, today we're going to cook. I've got a recipe over there because I'm never sure of what the guys are having in-house for me. Spätzle with spinach and speck. Which is a recipe from the north of Italy. You're Italian too?
Yes.
So we are both the decent cooks by tradition.
Yes, I've never done this dish, but I'm confident we can manage.
That's great. I really hope so. I really hope so. Michele, just to start, what does a creative and development director do? It's an interesting starting point. I guess.
It's a two-folded role, and actually two in one, because the creative side means that you have to create new IPs or think about franchises, about what to do next, because we do all the racing games, but different ones. So you have to keep on with the creative side and propel everything forward. While on the development side, you actually have to make those games. So that's roughly the funny part and the more managerial part, but they blend together very well.
You were going to say boring.
No, but it's not boring because there's challenge in everything and you have to appreciate that. And so that's one of the finest parts, to make the real things, make the games happen. It's a challenge, it's a daily challenge. And it's really, really interesting too. But nonetheless, I do both, so that's not boring.
Yeah, no, absolutely. How many people in total are currently, in the company?
More than 300, around something like 330. So we have development, but also publishing.
All right, so you publish your
yes,
everything
yes.
is
so,
self-published.
Yes. So under my hood, there's something like 230. But the rest are under many different areas too.
All right. And I'll ask you to cut the speck. Can I ask you this? So that we both do something whilst we chat a bit. And one of the interesting parts of your job, I guess, as a whole of the company, is that, as you say, you have to keep reinventing things because racing is racing, and sometimes it can be like a bit repetitive, I guess, both in your eyes and the player's eyes. How is the process of...
Well, we have very different games. We span from MotoGP, that is simulation or ride. There are games that are aimed towards a very specific kind of public. So they want really realistic approaches and represent something really connected to reality. So there, for example, for MotoGP, one key is to go to the tracks, to see the races, meet the people, the riders, the engineers, and it's very refreshing. There's always something to learn there.
Yeah.
And the thing you see on TV is not exactly what happens on the track. So you have to see it on TV, but you also have to go to the track and know the people. So you get something for the next installment all the time.
How's the process of taking reality, and not really reality, but taking what people think is reality and transforming it into a game? Because I think people are a bit biased about what they think is happening and what is actually happening.
The truth is, the life of a rider is a tough life. They do a lot of training, they have a lot of stress, they have strictly fixed daily routines, but that's not exactly what you want to represent. So what you want to represent is the moment where the tension rises before the race, all the preparation, but the more emotional feeling of this. So you have to try to focus on that. But also people watch races on TV, so they expect something also from that side. And there's always a ton of things that you ask yourself, should I represent it because people expect it? Or should I try to give an accent to something that maybe is not so exposed, but I want to put in the game too?
Yeah,
so there's a lot of going on in this sense.
And in terms of the sort of MotoGP IP that you have annual iterations of it, right? again, I guess you cannot, stick to just refreshing the pilots list and the riders and the motorbike models and so on. So, again, how do you improve on that year after year? What's the creative process behind that?
You have also to improve the physics and the graphics and all the things people expect, because there are many audiences. There's the more focused audience, that players that just want the core experience, maybe don't care a lot about the career or anything. They just want the very strong core, strong physics, a very visceral experience on the track, and that you have to accomplish by refining the physics, the sounds, and everything. But also there are other audiences, like those who want a more expansive approach, like the career. So you have to offer something. For example, we introduced what we call the race off, that is some training modes, not on the MotoGP bikes, but on something like flat track or smaller bikes. This is something to represent something external to what you see actually on TV, but they do for fun. And so bringing the fun to the players. But also there are very, very casual players that don't want simulation at all. So again, we have approached this, introducing something like an arcade mode. So there's a lot of things you have to accomplish, because many kinds of people watching MotoGP and many kinds of people want to enjoy the game, and it's not the same game for everyone.
Yeah, of course, of course. It's interesting because after so many years, you probably end up with a game that could be split into 4 or 5 different games and could still be standing on its own.
But yet it has to be one game.
Yeah.
And so it's quite of a challenge, because many of the things you have to present are hard, because even in the menus, how should I propose first? The casual approach or the simulation approach?
Makes sense, yeah.
What comes first? What kind of audience should come first? So this is the questions we have to face.
Cool.
I'm cutting in sticks. Is it fine?
That's fine, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That does look actually pretty good when we'll transfer that in the pan. We talked about MotoGP, and I was mentioning earlier that one of the games that was most successful over the last few years has been the Hot Wheels game.
Yes, a completely different one.
Exactly, a different experience, different audience, and it's also interesting because, as a game, it worked super well first. It could have been a game about anything, but it would have been working very, very well as a game. So, how do you think a game should stand on its own, and how is it impacted by the EP it represents?
Well, for Hot Wheels, it is very connected. Yes, it could have been a game without a Hot Wheels name, but it would not have been the same game. And because having to work on Hot Wheels stimulated some thinking, so we decided to go for the small scale. So possibly for the first time, the cars were represented as they are, as the toy cars are. And as strange as it gets, it was never done before. And this was the starting point. So we created an experience around as a consequence. So a world where to put the toy cars, and then came the experience, and then came creating trucks with the orange pieces. So it was all starting very connected to the IP, to the license. But again, we had to put in place some strong ideas, because creating the truck editor was not something you do overnight. Yeah. But we felt that it was integral part of the experience of Hot Wheels. How do you experience it in reality?
Of course.
So it all started to develop from this.
It's interesting that you keep referring to the fact that about inventing stuff, because I think people really, in general, we underestimate the amount of creative effort there is behind such experiences. I guess this was it the first time you were managing such a different type of target audience?
Possibly so, because it was the first time, and it's been a breakthrough in terms of success. Yeah. Yes, it was possibly the first time, and it was quite of a a gamble in terms of understanding the audience, because that there never had been a really successful Hot Wheels game or a really quality Hot Wheels game. So we aimed for kids, but also for adults that love Hot Wheels. And in fact, I loved Hot Wheels even before I was collecting them. And you discover that, again, there are many audiences because Hot Wheels is a very complex world. It's been around for decades, and there are kids that buy the originals, the one that they create, but there are people collecting the real cars in Hot Wheels form. Then there are very high-end collectors, there are limited editions, there are vintage ones sold for astounding numbers. So again, it's a very
fragmented audience as well.
Fragmented but connected, because they found a game that embraced them all. So what could have been fragmented was instead all connected. So you had possibly a father and a son playing together the very same game for different reasons.
That's really cool. That's really cool. So, well, I guess that I don't know if that's the reason why you started exploring other worlds and so on, but brings us to more like nowadays where you're working on so many different things. And before we get to the big project that you're working on right now, or the bigger project you're working on right now, I want to go back to this idea of the motorbikes experience, because I think you're working on so many different things, and Ride is for me the game where you have to sort of compete in a world of games that are kind of structurally similar, right? A campaign, a lot of bikes, and so on. What's the idea behind Ride, and where do you want to take it over the years?
We have announced Ride 6, and it's pretty evident, I think, from the announcement trailer, the direction. So Ride has been for a long time a game focused on, obviously motorcycles. But we started thinking that you cannot go on forever in this direction, that is the encyclopedia direction. More motorbikes, has more motorbikes, but it's not enough. It's not enough to please the players. So we introduced some new concepts.
That's great. So after long trying not to make everything throw everywhere, we sort of have this creamy sauce of spinach, which I will ask you to decorate with some nutmeg, a term that I didn't know the existence of until about 10 minutes ago. So you were saying, going from having a wide number of trucks and bikes and being encyclopedia.
It still has tons of bikes and trucks, but you want more. So we trying, and I think we're succeeding into translating Ride from something colder and abstract into something more emotional and personal. So we introduced the festival and the champions. So Ride has always been real bikes, but who rides them? You and who else? So we introduced some fictional characters, recurring characters in the previous chapter, and now we stepped on. So we have 10 real riders from different disciplines, like Casey Stoner or Guy Martin or Troy Bayliss, or many other that are the bosses of their discipline. So you have to climb up to them and finally try to beat them. So they're real faces, they're real opponents you can find, because in MotoGP, in Formula One, in racing, you don't race against cars or bikes, you race against characters, riders, drivers. So Ride needed that, and we are working in this direction. I think it's enough.
It's perfect. It's perfect. Thank you very much. All right, and the other thing is, interestingly, that this is actually taking us to that game, but you're trying basically to make people more attached to the experience of the game rather than just you know, riding a bike on a track and
yes, you cannot make people really attached by the numbers only.
Yeah.
That's only for a fraction of simulation super lovers.
Yeah.
That are counting the cars, counting the trucks, but you don't reach all the people like that. And this leads, I think you're going to talk about Screamer, because that's the next step in this direction.
It's like not only, you know, making people attached to games, to the experience, but trying to tell them a story, which I find fascinating because it is super hard to tell a story within a driving game.
Yes, Screamer starts from a very different point of view. So the genesis of the game was we want to give back to life Screamer. Screamer was a game old, something like almost 30 years ago, and there was little to translate directly into the modern age. So when I started to think to this game, I wanted to start not from the cars, but from characters.
Okay.
And when you start from characters, the next thing was not to make them the usual drivers, because the usual drivers only talk about winning, losing, crashing, their rivalries on track or off track, and it can get easily in the cheesy movie domain.
Which is interesting. You were mentioning over earlier, you know, how cringe some of the dialogues of these driving movies are.
You end up always saying the very same things, and I didn't want that. So Screamer has characters, but they don't look like drivers because they have their own personality and their own story, and then they drive. They drive because there's a story and there's a higher motive, but they have their inner motive. And there's a lot of discovery in this way, and there's a lot to be created in this way. And then everything else comes. The cars go along with the characters and not vice versa. So everything revolves around the characters, and the characters revolve around the story. I cannot say much, but there's a lot going on in here.
I think, you know, and going back, I mean, it's interesting what you're saying, but, you know, of course, you know, characters, but it's the driving game ultimately, right? So what is it that you're focusing on when you're trying to make a new driving game, considering that the amount of driving games out there and, you know, in terms of the driving experience?
Well, it's different all the times. Again, for Screamer, we wanted to create an experience that was not only flashy, but without substance. So there's a lot of work going on also for the gameplay. Screamer wants to be something like a modern classic, an instant classic. And that's ambitious, I know, but we put in place some new mechanics for the driving, and there's a very complex meta. So everything that happens during a race is very, very new. So what we wanted to create is something that would break the mold of arcade racers. Arcade racers, again, tend to be very, very similar. You drift, you boost, and it's something you do in Screamer too, but in a very, very different way. So we wanted to create something unique, starting from a white page.
And you know, it's how does that integrate with the story? So you have a set of characters and they do things on track, and so what do? They try to go faster. You've got weapons as well.
There are no weapons. You use your car as basically a weapon because you can strike the other characters.
All right, yeah. I was seeing your go watch it, the very well done documentary about the making of the game, and that's what you were saying, like using the car as like a weapon, like you have in beat-em-up games, right? You know,
yes. And there's a lot of references to fighting games because I'm a fan of many of the franchises, and if you see that in Screamer there are teams, and the teams are made of 3 characters, it's very easy to trace it back to King of Fighters.
Yeah.
So it's a strong vibe there, and again, you choose the character, you don't choose the car. And there's a lot of things going on for the story. For the driving itself, yeah, it's very personal because every car has some skills and some particular abilities. So it's easy to pick it up, but then you discover there's a lot more for each of the characters you play. Like in fighting games, you have to, many of them, you know, many players specialize to a specific character or a specific roster of characters, and not all of them. And we expect the same for Screamer.
Again, on this idea of you know, having a different type of style of driving, or you know, attaching to a character and specializing in a character, how do you differentiate from driver to driver the way you actually play the game?
You're also asking how we connect the gameplay to the characters.
Yes.
I cannot say everything right now, but we've come up with clever ways why things happen.
Okay.
They're connected to the story and are connected to the gameplay.
So, the game at the moment has been in development for how long? Well, I would say, you know, in terms of your pipeline, how long does it take you to make a game? Well, I guess you tell me it varies.
Well, MotoGP is a development cycle of 1 year because it's a yearly franchise. Screamer has been in development for, well, the first draft, very small draft, was written something like close to 3 years ago.
Wow, okay.
So it's one of the longest games. They can span a couple of years or 3 years.
Okay. Go for it. How much are you reliant on existing technology? So how much do you develop stuff that you reuse?
A lot. We use Unreal Engine.
Okay.
So that's a good starting base. It's not all-inclusive because you need a lot of custom tech to do the racing part, the AI part. Many of the things are very, very specialized.
Okay.
We try to really use as much as possible from one game to the other. We have a strong research and development team that sometimes integrates back something that has been developed for one title back to the other. Sometimes it's a good fit. Sometimes technology is specialized only for one team. And
Okay. But it's interesting because, I mean, we are going towards that. You know, many development teams are realizing that, all right, I should reuse this.
Well,
yeah, but you're doing that a lot already.
That's not for free. For example, we have an AI system. There's a lot of talking about AI. This is kind of different. This is the AI that drives the vehicles.
Okay.
It's been developed from scratch. It's machine learning based.
Okay.
So they learn to ride or drive by themselves. But it's not easy to port from one title to the other. They're so specific that to teach and to make them teach to ride a bike or a car, it's very complicated. So it's an in-house technology, yes. We have completely available, yes. Porting it from one title to another is a breeze, so and so.
Okay. This is like my grandmother would do things with a lot more butter than olive oil. There's this thing where, you know, people don't realize. I mean, Italy is famous for olive oil and so on, but in the north of Italy, everyone still uses a lot more butter. Yeah, my grandmother would not use olive oil ever. All right. So no, I was saying, going back to the actual technology part or development part. How much is do you think is technology helping you differentiate the games? I mean it in a way that I think more than in other genre in racing games, especially when you do MotoGP and ride and so on, photorealism is almost like a given by people, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, and how do you cope with that as technology progresses? How do you I mean?
Yeah, we have different goals from this perspective because, as you say, there are some kind of games that where photorealism is given for granted, but then, for example, Hot Wheels is trying to aim for a different photorealism. That is the small scale photorealism. Yeah. So the detail is very different. You have to try to pour the detail on a very different scale. You discover that it's not the same sport. trying to do that
Yeah, of course.
in 64 scale. And technology helps, but sometimes it has to be a little bent to help you. Or a screamer wants to reach a strange blend between realism and pictorial look, something different.
All right, I'll ask you to help me cut this, please. Please, pretty please. Not that much,
Yeah.
but yes. So yeah, because I think that people underestimate the idea of you know, having such big games, because you have. I mean, your games are big, are huge. You know, they tend to have a lot of tracks, and every track has to be sort of super accurate.
Enough?
I think it's fine. A lot of tracks, a lot of bikes, and you know, there's a lot of art in
Yes.
these games.
Yes, there's a lot of assets you have to create and check, and especially complicated by the fact that when they are real, they have to be approved from the manufacturers of the license holders, and it's quite of a complicated task, admittedly, because when you have something like Ride with dozens of makers of things like motorcycles, custom parts, suits, helmets, it's a daunting task.
Yeah, yeah, and there's an element I've always been curious about, is that racing tracks. The real ones, they're usually boring and bare bones. When you ride around them, there's nothing much around them, right?
Yeah, because you need a lot of space because they're wide, and then you have to have the escape routes, the sand traps. So when you go fast, you seem like you feel slow.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing close to you.
So yeah, because to give the impression of going fast, you need elements on the track that go by very quickly, right?
Yes. When a game is aiming to be realistic, very realistic, you have to also understand this, that if you're on a real racetrack at 200 kilometers per hour, it's like going at 100 on the public road, as a feeling. So it's not about the sense of speed by itself. It's more about the sense of risk or limit.
Okay.
Because you're not concentrating. A real MotoGP rider very rarely say how fast I am. There's only a couple of spots that are really chilling also for them. Like, you know, in Mugello, the first braking point where Rossi put his helmet with his face like because it was the feeling he had braking at something like 330, 340 kilometers per hour.
Right.
But else, they're not frightened.
Okay.
They're concentrating on pushing the limits. So in racing games, in realistic racing games, you want to convey that, not the astonishing sense of speed, but the sense of being on the edge of the limit of control. And to do so, you cannot give 100% or more the sense of pure speed. There has to be degrees.
Okay.
There has to be something like breathing space.
And in games like Ride, you give more the sense of speed then?
Ride has also tracks that are road races, fictional or real, they are. So there you get a real sense of chilling speed because the road is tight and the speed is astonishing, like, you know, in the real road races. But that's an exception. It doesn't happen quite often. And we recreate fictional tracks in this way also because it's very exciting. But it's also very hard to ride because there's zero tolerance for mistakes because you touch and you fall.
Yeah, of course. I find it super amazing that, you know, there's these details about, you know, sense of speed and control, and it has to be different from game to game.
Yes. Screamer is completely different in managing the sense of speed. Screamer aims to convey the sense of speed, and possibly many of the things in the camera work, in the effects are built around this kind of sense of speed, because you can manage actually cornering speed exceeding reality.
Of course.
But by huge amounts. So you sustain space.
Are these design choices you make very early in the process and then adapt?
Yes.
To assess?
In Screamer, it was from the first design, speed and crashing at high speed and respawning effortlessly, not from standing still, but in motion. It was designed from the very beginning as a very, very visceral experience.
Okay. One thing which is always very intriguing about games like Screamer, for instance, when you try to start something from scratch, but it's a driving game, so you need to make sure that you're giving the sense of, all right, I know what I'm doing, because it's. How far did you go into trying to break the mold of, okay, this is a new thing, so I'm going to try and experiment something new, instead of going like, I want to make people comfortable in knowing what they're playing?
Screamer wanted to break all the possible molds existing.
Okay.
Because, as I was saying, it does not start from the cars, it starts from the characters. It aims for a very different control system with twin sticks. It has a lot of dynamics going on during the race, altering the pace and the evolution of the race. So Screamer wanted to go for something that you can understand, because it has not to be impossible to understand and learn and to master, but it's a novelty you can understand.
Okay.
Hot Wheels is more simple. It doesn't mean it's easy to win or easy to compete, but has less ingredients, conveying a more comfort experience. You drift, you boost, and in race, you have to manage the things that are the special pieces that do clever things to you, like eating you. But it's a different approach because it's for different kinds of target audiences.
All right. So, guys, Michele, I think we have. Have you ever seen one of these?
No.
No. Okay. All right. Well, I don't know how to call it, but it's a great piece of game design.
It's a spazzle maker.
Spazzle maker, of course it is. Yeah. Right. So we're basically putting this on top here, and then we'll have these slowly drip into the water, and we have like probably 2 minutes to sort of let them cook and then lift them, take them out. So it's not going to be long.
As soon as they come afloat, they're ready.
Like a gnocchi.
Like the gnocchi.
Like a gnocchi. We've done gnocchi in a previous episode. Go watch it now. It's a great gnocchi making experience. Michele, one element of being a creative and development director is being able to juggle a team of people making many projects at the same time.
Yeah.
And one way to do this is to have like fixed teams doing their own thing, and then when they're finished, you move it to something else. How do you cope with managing all different things? Because you have different deadlines, different releases, but also on one hand you have recurring games that you can sort of, I'm just making things as broad as possible, but you can plan ahead a bit, right? And also you have completely new games where there's a lot more, question marks on what will go right, what will go wrong, and so on. How do you manage that?
Well, we have multiple teams, as I was saying, but every team has a core team, like a game director and some leads, and some people stay in the same team for multiple projects, but then other people can come and go from one title to the other, because when they're in pre-production, there's very few people doing some key things. Then production ramps in, people join the team, production expands, and then the game is released. I'm making it very easy, but the game is released, and then you do some post-production, and people possibly go somewhere else. Then they come back when the next game, being the same or another, is ramping up again. So what we do, we have we call it a matrix, because on the columns you have the teams, on the rows you have departments. There are heads leading departments for programmers, designers and artists. So the goal of the teams is making the game. The goal of the departments is slotting the people, make them grow, making sure that good practices are spread across all the artists, for example, of different projects, and making sure that they use the same tools efficiently and many things. So people are moving from teams. We try to keep them as fixed as possible, but games inflate or deflate during their lifetime.
In a game like MotoGP, for instance, you say that these are annual releases, right? Yeah. How far in advance you decide what's going in the next iteration? Not the next iteration. Are you planning the second to next iteration, or are you planning the next one?
Not exactly. We have the usual drawer of ideas.
Okay.
So we plan the next one. What exactly is going to be in the following is not sure, but you can take from the drawer. Then this could be like a little schizophrenic, but it's not, because you follow some routes. Like if you're working on something like the race-offs I was saying before, the next year you don't want to remove them, you want to enrich them. So if 1 year you're adding something, possibly the next year you're going to develop it further. But at the same time, you have to think something that was not present.
Okay.
So, as I was saying, you have to think about the actual players. So if I enjoyed MotoGP this year, what I possibly want the next year? Something more, something different, something for me, or something that might surprise me. So we try to go in this direction.
How often does it happen that you have to remove something that you've introduced like 4 or 5 years earlier?
It happens when it's not fun anymore. Because one thing, many people buy MotoGP every year. Many, I don't know, they skip 1 year and buy this. If something stays there, we're not kind of like removing from you the past titles you have played and bought. So it's not like we're obliterating the past. There are some MotoGP games that have something very interesting. It's there. You can go back and play. For example, we had one edition where you had a playable documentary that was called 9. It was revolving the year 2009 with the last championship from Rossi. So it was a very, very complex thing with some documentary parts, challenges blending together. It's very hard to make it every year.
Of course.
In fact, we've done it only once because it was a real challenge, but it's there. Then another year we introduce something new and different.
Cool. Michele,
the moment of truth.
This is the moment of truth. This is one of the best experiences of my life. All right, so I think this process seems to be working.
Yes.
Just
the complex physics
fakes
involved.
of happiness. We have to be proud of ourselves here. All right, can I ask you to take the wine, please? And now, ladies and gentlemen, we can try and be proud of ourselves. What do you think?
Better than I expected, really.
Your expectations were so low?
No, I was not lacking trust, but this requires a little of faith.
It does, yeah. Especially when you do it the first time. They actually look good. Can I ask you to open the wine?
Yes.
We should have, there's a bottle opener there.
We have a passerina from Abruzzo.
Yes, it's the tradition from the Geek Recipe. So when we do a recipe from the north, we have a wine from the south. So Abruzzo is not in the south because you don't want to be geographically incorrect. But I guess it's a good compromise. When we send Andrea to buy the wine, he always comes back with just enough, just good enough. We asked for some wine from Puglia. He came back from some wine with some wine from.
It was a close shot.
A close shot. It's not too far. And black pepper for you. Can you do the black pepper thing, please, Mr. Chef? It does look good.
It does look good.
First time is my guest is pouring the wine, but I guess expert more than I am.
It's your role.
So it's kind of a given. Thank you for joining us, Michele. It was a pleasure having you here, and good luck with Screamer.
Thanks.